The Green Party of Canada has been around for almost 4 decades, but it was only under outgoing leader Elizabeth May that it elected a member of Parliament. They now have a caucus of 3, and since Ms. May is stepping aside as leader, they're looking for someone that can keep and build on the gains under her leadership. They have no shortage of contenders. There are 10 candidates vying to take the reins. In the interest of actually hearing from each properly, we've split this into 2 debates. 5 contenders tonight, 5 tomorrow. And with that, we welcome, in alphabetical order, in Clemensport, Nova Scotia, Judy Green, a Canadian Armed Forces veteran and the party's candidate in West Nova in last year's federal election. In Vancouver, British Columbia, Amita Kuttner, an astrophysicist and the party's critic for science and innovation for the past 2 years. In Saanich, British Columbia, David Merner, lawyer and the Green candidate last year in Esquimalt Saanich-Sooke. In Winnipeg, Manitoba, Glen Murray, former mayor of Winnipeg and a former Ontario Minister of the Environment, among other portfolios. And here in Ontario's capital city, Annamie Paul, lawyer, social entrepreneur, and the Green candidate in Toronto Centre in last year's election. And we are delighted to welcome half of the people who are running for the leadership of the Green Party of Canada. And I want to start just by saying we're obviously dispensing with sort of official debate rules here. There's no opening statements or that. We're going to dive right into it, and we'll do the best we can to make sure everybody gets equal time tonight. Let me put this premise out here, and then we'll dive into this. When people think Liberal Party of Canada, or New Democratic Party of Canada, or Conservative Party of Canada, they have a sense where those parties are on the political spectrum, and therefore some sense about what they're voting for when they vote. Where do you see the Green Party under your leadership fitting into that political spectrum? We know where it's been under Elizabeth May. I guess we want to find out how different you would make the party if you were in charge. Judy Green, start us off, please.
Awesome. Thank you for that question. We often get asked whether we're left or right or where we fall on the spectrum. And I think that we have evolved past a simple left or right. There's something called an axial shift, which actually takes into account issues of social responsibility and how well our people are doing. It fits well into the wellness economy. And I really like that approach much better than a simple left or right, because really the Green Party is about finding the best solution for the problems we have. And that solution may come from anywhere along that spectrum. We really have to be solution focused and long-term thinkers in terms of really fixing the problems, not just putting Band-Aids on them.
Amita, how would you answer that?
Well, I definitely think that I am socially left and would like to see the party be squarely socially left. But in terms of economic policy, I believe what we're bringing forward is something entirely new, something that's being brought up across the world, especially now even in Europe, like circular economies and stuff like that. So it's going to be up to a conversation with every community to see how that definition works on their political spectrum, which I think now has more dimensions than just 2.
David.
I see us as Greens, who are the most progressive party in Canada. We've fought inequality. It's in our DNA. We were the first party to endorse equal marriage. We're the first party to have a serious guaranteed livable income program to eliminate poverty in Canada. So we're very progressive, but we're also fiscally responsible. We cost every promise we make. We tell people how we're going to pay for it. So we combine the best of all worlds. I don't see us as just being left or right. I see us as looking at policy that's deeply transformative, solutions that work for Canadians. It's not about left or right for us.
Annamie.
Thank you, Steve. And welcome everyone to my hometown, Ontario. First of all, I wanted to give those greetings. I love getting asked this question, Steve, because the reasons are very clear to me. And I believe that particularly because of the pandemic, where Canadians are going to be asking themselves that question and looking at our party with fresh eyes. And what they're going to see is a party that is extremely, as David said, progressive. We are very progressive. We are interested in creating a more just and sustainable society. We are also extremely collaborative, and Canadians have seen how important that's been in terms of the pandemic and getting things done quickly and getting relief to people. And so, looking at a party that has that as its modus operandi, that really believes in that and wants to reinforce that throughout our political system, I think is absolutely something that sets us apart. And the thing that I'm most excited about, and we talk about a lot in our campaign, is daring. we are the party that pushes the discussion forward. We are the party that introduces those new ideas into the political discourse. And, we need that more than ever now. We need that more than ever. And if Canadians want to see more of that, then they'll be looking at us. And I think that really sets us apart.
Glen Murray, where on the political spectrum do you see the Glen Murray-led Green Party? Let's put it that way.
Well, I think we span from green capitalists, people who would be in the Tom Rand kind of philosophical world, the Toby Heaps, to eco-socialists and everything in between. But what differentiates us from that isn't a left-right split, because I think we're a big tent party in that sense, is that we're the only party that totally embraces a circular economy, an economy which reuses and repurposes materials, that is completely committed to renewables. It's not just recycling for us or clean energy. It's a complete shift from an economy built on resource extraction to one built on recovery and the inclusion and priority of wellness as the outcome. And that makes us dramatically different than the other parties.
Let's dive deeper on that.
Steve, if I could just jump in for a second. I'm
Sure.
sorry, it's the obvious thing, and sometimes Greens forget it because it's so obvious to us. But what sets us apart from all of the other political parties more than anything else is our commitment to the climate and our commitment to targets that correspond with the science. We are the only party in Canada that has set targets that correspond to what we have been told we need to reach if we're going to avoid the worst impacts of the climate change that we're seeing.
Well, let's dive deeper on that right now. Let me put a question to all of you right now. And Amita, why don't we get you to start on this one? The skies of our major cities right now are remarkably pollution-free these days. We know this. We can see it, we feel it, and there's evidence to back it up. That's perhaps one of the very few good things that this pandemic has delivered. But how do we take that positive development and run with it? When safety suggests, and here's what I'm getting at here, more people may drive their cars in future because they're afraid to get on transit. More people are going to be using single-use plastic because when they bring their reusable bags to go to the supermarket, they're not allowed to use them anymore. They get handed those plastic bags for fear of spreading the virus. Help us understand how we take this moment in time and run with it. Amita, you first.
Thank you, Steve. It's so important that we actually embrace this moment because I think people have actually seen how precarious so many people's lives are and how much just a little shift can actually send everybody over the edge. And thus that need for absolute transformation of our economy, of our societies, to a place where we really care about each other is necessary. But what I find is interesting about those exact things, so the plastic bags and even the reduction in pollution, it's shown us on the pollution side how clean it can become quickly, but those things are also small. We haven't actually seen a significant reduction in our emissions across the planet, which is really what's going to be driving disaster. So we need to use this moment when everyone sees how our lives have become somewhat dystopian to bring forward that concept of a future where we can actually bring about the change necessary to confront climate change and also bring everybody into a more just, equitable way of living.
David, how about you next?
Yeah, I'd just like to pick up on Amita's answer. They're right when they say we are at the right time for deep transformational solutions to the problems we face, and we need to seize the moment. People are calling out for deep change, and what they get from the old line parties is incremental steps, small change. But we're a party that's really deeply based in evidence. You wouldn't believe the number of engineers and scientists, even on this panel that we have. And so let's take the evidence-based solutions. We're now listening to the public health doctors we never used to. Let's listen to the climate scientists. Let's listen to the experts who say we can make deep change in our society, in our economy, in how our government works, in how our social programs work. You know, the Canada Emergency Response Benefit is another example. It's not working very well for everybody. Bring in the guaranteed livable income because we know that can work. We've seen the pilot projects. So I agree. This is a time for deep change. And the Greens, the one thing that distinguishes us is we've always advocated change for the next generation and 7 generations down the road based on evidence. And I think that's a really compelling offer to Canadians and also around the world. We can build something new if we just listen to some of these leading edge Green Party policies.
Glen Murray, how do we take advantage of this moment?
Well, I think we have to do new things, but we have to get back to what was working. Ontario, where you're sitting, Steve, just was probably breaking about a 20% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions, not over the 2005, but over 1990 with cap and trade, with the closure of coal plants. We still have provinces that haven't closed coal plants. We hardly have a province or a working carbon pricing system. The federal carbon tax is a joke. When Ontario's EV programs and Quebec EV and cap and trade programs were either stalled or canceled, we jumped 15 megatons in 1 year. We need to get people elected who know how to design these programs quickly and get them back on track. We are going so quickly in the other direction, it's not funny. We have to be, we have 8 years to stabilize our climate, cap growth in GHG emissions and bring them down. Fortunately, that gives us, if we do the circular economy model, which circular economy is a commitment to zero emissions and zero waste, we can get there. But Canada has gone in the last 3 years from being a major leader in the world to being a global laggard. And only the Greens, as my colleagues would all have been saying, is the only party that gets this anymore and is committed to it.
Judy, to you next.
I agree with my fellow panelists. Incremental change is not going to solve the problems. We're seeing with COVID-19 that we're only getting small reductions, and they're only temporary in CO2 emissions. We need to go after those big emitters. We have to, this is what got me into politics in the last election, is that I recognized that we have to use political will to enforce regulations that are going to help us meet these targets. And the Greens are the only ones who have targets and a plan to get there. Even more importantly, we need to be looking at sequestering carbon. It's not a silver bullet, one thing that's going to fix the issues that face us. We have to be sequestering carbon. We have to be using regenerative techniques in farming. We need to be really reshaping our forestry. It's not about, the fiber that comes off the land. It's about how much that value those forested areas are sequestering carbon that we simply cannot afford to release into the atmosphere right now. So it is a broad spectrum. And I think that's something people don't understand about the Green Party platform, is that we have solutions for everything across the board. And it's not just a single issue. So we can do it. We have a plan. We just need to get into Parliament.
Annamie, let's get you on this one.
It's an excellent question, and we might not have an opportunity like this for a long time. I just heard last night from some Greens that I was speaking to, they said that are in their 60s and 70s that they have never seen a moment like this. And so you're absolutely right. The question is, how do we harness it? And this is where government comes in. This is where political parties come in. We've been slowly over time, drip, 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 taught to think small, think small, think small, think, in micro targeting. And really what we need to be doing now is building a grand vision for the country. We have seen through the pandemic that it is possible for different levels of government to cooperate. We've seen how much good comes out of collaboration, and really that is the direction that we need to be headed in. And I agree with the other panelists that, the Green Party and choosing the Green Party is the single best thing that people in Canada can do if they want to see that grand vision implemented. And so, I look to the European Union. I spent many years working in the European Union for our government and other multilaterals, and I see their EU Green Deal. I see their carbon border adjustment mechanism. Glenn, I think we moved on a bit perhaps from cap and trade, and I see the future. And so if they can do it, Canadians can do it. People in Canada are up to the job. They just need it articulated by their leaders, and this is where leadership matters the most.
Well, since you mentioned Glen Murray, I should give him a chance to come back on that, because he was the Environment Minister in Ontario that brought in the cap and trade plan that the Ford government subsequently canceled. Glen Murray, do you think the time for cap and trade has come and gone?
No, I think it's necessary but not sufficient. Cap and trade is the only system that works. The European systems aren't working. California and Quebec are still on track. Quebec, Ontario, and California, because what cap and trade gives you, it's a legislated cap. Ontario was coming down at 4.3% per year. So what you get with cap and trade is you get a guaranteed reduction. because you basically have built a carbon budget, which is what we need to do, and you reduce that by 4.3% per year, making it impossible for anyone to emit greater than that. What a carbon tax like the Canadian ones have just gives you price certainty. It sets the tax, and no legislature has been prepared to raise it to the 40, 50, 60, 70 or dollars a ton necessary to have an impact, because the only impact it has.
But Glenn, wouldn't we say that that's a question? Wouldn't we say, Glenn, that that's a question of leadership as opposed to a question of what works best? I mean, we have a general consensus amongst economists, against Nobel Prize winning economists, that a carbon tax is the cheapest, most efficient way when compared to cap and trade and other means to actually get to our target. So are we really getting back to the main thing, which is the leadership that's needed in order to convince Canadians that this really is the best and cheapest option for them?
Show me a tax system in the world that's working, and show me any system that was more effective than the Quebec, Ontario, California cap and trade system. Nobody was reducing. Let me finish. Let me just finish. And that's not enough, because you need a legislative cap. You also need mandates right now. To switch our fleet off electric vehicles, we are going to have to mandate, as we did going into the Second World War, and as we did with coal plant closures, we're going to have to limit the number of internal combustion engine vehicles that can be sold every year. We've got to get to Z mandates. We have to do a lot more. We have to legislate the shift in technologies. We only have 10 years. But there isn't a tax system in the world that came close to the success of the California, Quebec, Ontario system. There was just simply isn't one that achieved those results.
Let me hear from the other three of you on this. David, we have the federal carbon tax that's in place right now. We hear Conservatives talking about getting there via regulation. We've heard about cap and trade. There are other ideas out there as well. What do you like?
Well, it's ironic that the Conservatives are talking about regulation, because that seems to go against the whole idea. The great thing about cap and trade and the carbon tax is that you're setting a pricing mechanism, and that's what we need to do. I think that Glenn is right. We need a comprehensive solution. I actually agree with Annamie as well that putting a price on carbon is essential to getting there. But it's way beyond that. We need to transform the way our economy works. We need to create the largest job creation program in Canadian history through the Green New Deal. We need to build an east-west electrical grid across our country, powered by renewables. And we need to make a just transition where no one's left behind from fossil fuels to renewables. So we need to talk about a big, comprehensive solution to this problem. It's not about whether one little change or another is better. It's about how do we make big transformational change in something where the scientists are telling us we only have 5 or 6 or 7 years to go before the global climate emergency becomes irreversible. So it's time for action on all fronts. It's time for all hands on deck right now.
Amita, can I get you to weigh in on this?
Yeah, so I think everybody has brought up really important points, but we're actually missing the core of it, which is we don't have 7 or 8 years. We have 0. Yep. And I speak from a scientific perspective here, and I love the conversation about evidence-based policy, but generally we really don't actually see anything that's evidence-based. And if we look at what's going on across the entire planet right now, there's already destruction. And I've been through it myself. I lost my mother and my house in a mudslide. And so I'm watching everyone across this planet suffer already. It's not 7 years. It's every single minute we can possibly get to do everything we can. So I agree, it's going to take more than one method, but we have to work together, and we have to be aware that we are actually in a position of privilege based on where we are in the world in terms of direct climate impacts, that it's far worse, and we have a responsibility with our prosperity to do as much as we can, as fast as we can.
Judy.
Yes, I agree. Carbon tax is just one tool in the toolkit, and we don't have time to have this incremental change, and we have to have the political will. We have cap and trade in Nova Scotia, and they really fumbled the ball, because what they did is the top 3 emitters, they gave them their carbon credits for free for 4 years. So that's delaying us from actually reaching those targets in 4 years. So the political will has to be there. The understanding has to be there. I hear conversations from our political leaders who don't truly understand how carbon pricing even works. And that is, these people are making the decisions. And that's terrifying when we don't have time to play these games. We have to have a fully fleshed out plan, and we have to get started on it now, preferably a year ago or 4 years ago or 10 years ago. But we have to do what we can now, and that means everything. That means all hands on deck, and there's no pussyfooting around any longer.
Can I ask our director, Sheldon Osmond, to bring that 5 shot back up so I can see everybody at once, and perhaps through a show of hands, is there anybody here who thinks we need more pipelines in the country? Any show of hands? Okay, that's an 0 for 5, right? We have no pipeline supporters on this group right all. Okay, understood. In which case, I'm not even going to waste time on that question, because if there's nothing to debate, there's nothing to debate. Let's move on. The Liberals and New Democrats, they would say, had serious environmental planks in their last election platforms. Have they become green enough? The Conservatives are a different story. For whatever reason, polls have suggested that the public didn't see them as having a serious environmental policy on climate change. Do you think those parties have become green enough to make you redundant? Go ahead, Glen Murray, start us off.
No, they're. You look at them all from BC, the Green, the NDP particularly, are now one of the parties that's contributing to major greenhouse gas emissions in supporting fossil fuels. I mean, the project that they're supporting in BC is going to do more, create more pollution than the $2.8 billion the Ontario Conservatives are putting into gas plants. And I think we know what works now. I mean, what New Zealand is doing works to an extent. Norway has a huge 20+ sales tax on internal combustion engines, so they can do that. But if you're not prepared to have a high carbon tax, a very high one, or a cap and trade system which can deliver the same results at $15, $20, $25 a ton that takes $60 or $80 or $100 a ton to do that, we need systems that work. The only party that seriously is talking about workable systems that you could get elected on, because no one's going to get elected on a $300 carbon tax, that you need caps, you need a trade system, you need things that keep it affordable and work well in the economy. We know that now. We know California is working. We know the carbon tax jurisdictions are still seeing emissions go up. So the NDP used to support cap and trade under Jack Layton. It was very popular when they did that. And part of the reason Jack supported it was because it's not just environmentally effective. You can get elected on a cap and trade system, and you get better results with a cap and trade system. So I think we actually have to have, for an evidence-based party, we should look around the world, and we should actually look at the evidence. And that the other one that works is fee and dividend, and it works very well as a complementary system, as a social equity model, as it does in California. And we need to hold ourselves to our own standard of evidence-based standard. We need something that could work. And Amita, we have to get way down. We should be 10, 20, 15% down within 10 years, because the number I'm talking about in 10 years is we have to be carbon neutral long before 2050. And if we don't cap our emissions in the next couple of years, bring them down. I totally agree with your assessment. Australia lost a quarter of its forests. Syria has 8.6.
Oh, I think we have our first technical difficulty, which is amazing we've lasted this long without one. We'll get back to Glen Murray in a second. Obviously, in this era of COVID, we're using different kinds of technology here, and stuff freezes up from time to time. Judy Green, do we still need the Greens? Because the Liberals and New Democrats would say we've got the environment pretty well covered in our platforms.
Well, they certainly talk the good talk, but, actions speak a heck of a lot louder than words. And when push comes to shove, they cave in every single time. We've seen that over and over and over again, and we have to stop it. What they say, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. The Greens are the only ones who've been consistent with their message, consistent with the solutions, has been evidence-based, and we're ready to go. I feel like saying, we're ready. Send us in, coach.
Annamie Paul, how about you? The Greens redundant at this point?
It is such an interesting question, and I actually did a mental exercise about that when I was thinking about the Green Party, when I was deciding whether to run or not. I said, if the Liberals and the NDP just swallow our climate policies whole, they're converted, they've decided, they're on board, is there a reason for the Green Party to exist? And I believe absolutely there's a reason for the Green Party to exist, and I touched upon it before. It's really all about the fact that we are the ones that propose those policies that they absorbed, and that happens time and time and time again. Whether you're talking about the NDP's newfound, and we're very happy, I'm personally very happy, their newfound interest in guaranteed livable income, or the growing consensus around universal pharmacare, or plans for tuition-free post-secondary education. It is the Greens that have put those ideas into the political discourse, and we do it based on evidence. We do it without fear, and we do it on behalf of people in Canada. We are the party that occupies that space. It's unfortunate we're the only ones. I welcome and invite the other parties to join us there. But until there is another party that prioritizes the people first and the evidence-based policy first, there will always be a role for the Green Party in Canada.
Amita, your view on that?
I think this one is a bit tricky, and I'll start off by saying absolutely there's a massive, important place for the Green Party. But I think to actually maintain our relevancy, we have to shift back to our core and our values and everything else that we bring. And I say this because we saw in the last election, that was kind of the last time we were voting in Canada in a sort of preemptive way on climate. Now we see disasters here, like tornadoes and flooding. And we're at a point where just having climate policy isn't good enough. And we see that through the other parties. It's completely believable. And it makes sense that it's hard for any person to differentiate climate policies and what's good enough when everyone is promising the same thing. So we actually now have the job of building a movement, returning to our core of ecological wisdom, of presenting this picture of the world where we can live for generations sustainably, looking after each other with high well-being, and come back to our core also of representation, of bringing people to government. And I think by showing ourselves to be unique from the other parties, as well as always being the leader on climate and the ones that can also be the best on response, we will have more than a place, but a place for government.
David.
The other parties promise real change, but they consistently deliver either small change or they do the opposite of what they said during their campaigns. We see that here in British Columbia with the NDP. They're pouring $6.6 billion into the fossil fuel industries here, into a market that actually isn't sustainable. They're logging more old growth forest here on Vancouver Island than under the Liberals. And it's the same thing with the federal Liberals. The Liberals have said, we will cut fossil fuel subsidies to zero. And now we are subsidizing fossil fuel companies more than any other country in the OECD per capita. So it's shocking. And one of the things the Greens can say is, we do not do this. Environmental issues, ecological wisdom, these are core to our values. We are not going to break our promises. We're not going to say one thing and do the other. But more than that, we also, social justice is one of our core values. And we also have really well thought out plans, fully costed, on how we leave no one behind when we make the transition off fossil fuels and onto renewables. We have those plans costed out by the Parliamentary Budget Officer. They're very credible, serious plans. And I think Canadians are at the point, especially now in these times of COVID-19, to look at us in a new way, say, we need change. We need deep, transformational solutions, and we just can't count on the old line parties to keep their word. So let's try the Greens. Give the Greens a chance.
Okay, we're down to less than 10 minutes to go here. Time flies when you're having a good time. And I want to see if we can get two more questions in before we're done. Perhaps one of the biggest public policy issues that all of you, whoever wins this thing, will have to deal with in the future is to weigh in on this issue of whether to defund the police. And I know that means different things to different people. For some people, it means getting rid of the police services entirely. For others, it means taking that money that perhaps goes to police budgets now to have them respond to mental health issues and redirect it to others who can perhaps more effectively answer those calls. Amita, why don't you start us off? Defund the police. Are you for it? Are you against it? What does it mean to you?
I am absolutely for it, but its definition is definitely incredibly important. So I think it's also a long-term, not too long, but it's not an immediate thing. It's not an immediate process. So the first thing is to start deflecting funds towards health, towards education, towards community systems, because right now we see definitely overfunding of police. But there's something that diversion of funds will never accomplish, and that is undoing of systemic racism, violence, and oppression. So I do think that we need to completely overhaul the system, completely break it down and apart, and rebuild different systems. So whether it be mental health professionals responding to mental health calls, or community safety organizations to make sure that everyone on the ground is safe. But it does not also deny the real fact that we have some violent crime. But a lot of that is not by us, not by regular people. And so you may have to have a response force for that, but it cannot be one that is based in systemic racism, and it has to be apart from kind of regular life.
Annamie Paul, what does defund the police mean to you, and do we need to do it?
Thank you very much, Stephen. This is something that touches Black Canadians and Indigenous peoples overwhelmingly disproportionately. We are the two most overrepresented groups in the criminal justice system. We are the two groups that suffer most from excessive police use of force. And so it's something, of course, that it's just a day-to-day reality for me and for my community and for Indigenous peoples across the country. I know that there are candidates, Amita among them, and some others who have called for abolishing the police. I do not think that is the right strategy. I know from personal experience, and many others will tell you that it may be a very small number or percentage of the population, but there are some very bad people doing some very predatory things, and there's no amount of community or social services that is going to stop them from doing that, and we want them off of the streets. And so what we need to do is just be very clear about what is the appropriate role for the police and what is the appropriate role for other types of social services. And if I can just give a couple of things that we can absolutely start with just today, there is no need to delay. We can adopt the recommendations of the United Nations Working Group on People of African Descent. Their recommendations apply to Black Canadians. They also would apply to Indigenous peoples as well. And it is very comprehensive, and it's the result of a lot of work in the community. And we have launched a petition in my campaign for a national database on police use of force so that we can get the data, the disaggregated data that we need to know how deep the problem is. We know that it is catastrophic, but the numbers need to come to light so that we can actually take the action that we need to.
Okay, and David,
finally,
forgive me for
Steve,
jumping in. Sorry, Annamie.
I'll indulge myself for one more second just because of this issue. I will say that one of the most impactful things that people in Canada can do if they really care about this issue is to put Indigenous peoples and Black Canadians in positions of power so that we can talk for ourselves, so that we can implement the changes that are needed. The time for the listening is over. We have been very clear. It's time to allow us to take the action.
Okay, let's go to David Merner next on this issue of defunding the police.
Thanks, Steve. The Parliamentary Black Caucus has come up with a really good plan around police reform and how we fix a broken justice system. This is not just about the police, it's about a justice system. And more fundamentally, it's about systematic racism in our society. But we can overcome this. We have plans like the plan put forward by the Black Parliamentary Caucus. And I think that what we need is systematic change. I've worked inside the justice system for 28 years. I worked in human rights, I worked on Indigenous justice, and I've seen this myself. We need a justice system that is open to deep change, which is about empowering multidisciplinary teams. So the police, when they go to a place where there's a mental health issue, are not the first ones there, unless there's violence and danger, that's real danger to the mental health workers. We have a perfect example here in Victoria, British Columbia, assertive community treatment teams that work together and that make sure that the right person is doing the right job. Right now, we have too many silos in our justice system. We have too many silos in the way our government works. We need to focus on service to Canadians. And if we do this right, we can lead deep transformational change. That's what the Greens have always stood for, and it definitely applies here in addressing racism in Canada.
Judy Green, to you, please.
Can I just push?
No. Annamie, forgive me. We're going to run out of time, and I got to make sure everybody gets somewhat equal time here. Judy Green, over to you.
Thank you. I think that we're actually dealing with multiple issues right here. We're dealing with some horrendous violence against people who are Black, Indigenous, and people of color, and which are not excusable in any way, shape, or form. We're dealing with a corporate culture within a very colonial system, and that has to change. And I'm not convinced that we're going to root that out by having slow incremental changes. We have to change the mindset from being reactionary, only dealing with things after the fact, having our police officers going out and expecting to be dealing with criminals, even when they're dealing with somebody who might be having a mental health crisis. They only have one tool in their toolbox, and that's not efficient. And it's not fair to put them in that position either, because we need to be doing these multidisciplinary teams. We need to be having social workers going to these wellness calls. We need to be looking more at prevention within our communities as well. Guaranteed livable income, bringing people out of poverty, which reduces alcoholism and addictions. It keeps people in school. It reduces crime. And we have the stats that back that up. So the way I see it is it needs to be a shift. And it will be defunding, because those as we put money into these social supports, these preventative measures, then the police will be called on less and less in those communities. And so therefore, the funding for them will be less necessary. And we absolutely have to stop militarizing our police. And I'm a veteran. I understand that there's a place, to be able to defend ourselves. It is not in our police force. We do need a rapid action to be units to be able to address the violent crime that is still happening and will continue to happen, even with these in place. But what it's going to do is it's going to make it more equitable, so that we have far fewer people in prison and in the legal system simply because they come from a community or of lower means and don't have the supports and the privilege.
Okay,
that
Judy,
do.
forgive me, I'm jumping in because we've literally got a minute left, and I've got to give it to Glen Murray to weigh in on this. The last minute to you, Glen.
So when I was mayor, the policing budget was 20% in Winnipeg. It is now over 30%. All other services, housing, parks, recreation, social support, social services, were 50% of the budget. They're now 35%. The New Deal for City, which I worked on, pushed massive amounts of money from the federal government to cities. But you've got to relocalize this. The best housing programs in Winnipeg were when the community ran them. We need community-based development corporations, social enterprise. We built 6,000 affordable housing units, massively reduced crime, with a community-based policing model that used more health inspectors, social services folks, and building inspectors to enforce the law and bring civility. Decentralize government, put more money back in cities. I don't think you need a constitutional change, because you'll never get it, but there's nothing stopping it. We were so close. We put 5 cents a liter gas tax. The federal government has to transfer tax revenue to cities, and city governments have to give power back to those racialized minorities. School boards, community groups, let the communities run themselves. Toronto used to, under David Crombie, have neighborhood planning sessions, and every neighborhood developed its plan, and neighborhood corporations and social enterprise, not government-run programs. Re-empower people, relocalize it, follow the philosophies of that great adopted Canadian Jane Jacobs. We know how to do this. We just have to fix it. So defund the police is more about, let's restore funding to neighborhoods. Let's restore power to racialized communities. I did that very successfully when I was mayor, and we literally transformed neighborhoods. But we really didn't do it. When I said we, the people in the neighborhood do it. And those programs are destroyed. We're now into surveillance policing, police helicopters, smart technology, cameras, face recognition. This stuff is costing us a small fortune, and it enhances racism and enhances colonialization.
Friends, that's our time. Mr. Director, a 5-shot is exactly what I wanted, please, so we can thank Judy Green, Amita Kuttner, David Merner, Glen Murray, and Annamie Paul for joining us on TVO tonight. Good luck to all of you, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Steve.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario. CPA Ontario is a regulator, an educator, a thought leader, and an advocate. We protect the public. We advance our profession. We guide our CPAs. We are CPA Ontario. And by viewers like you. Thank you.